Welcome to the Scully Sez podcast, talking all things law, business, and more. Now here's your host, Tom Scully.
Okay, I'm going to start right now. And so I'm supposed to tell you that I'm Tom Scully, and this is the podcast called Scully Sez. And you should feel free to give us a thumbs up, as always. And that's all you're allowed to do. We're talking about some freedom today, so you have the freedom to give me a thumbs up. And that's about as far as it goes. All right. And, of course, we have Mr. Patrick here today. And
hello.
Yes, he's my co-host, hosting all the way from Ohio. And so anyway, I was going to point out we're talking a little bit about freedom, and particularly as there's a tension. I was going to say there's a tension with freedom and order, discipline. And when I used to be in school, they used to make a distinction that there's a difference between freedom and license. License is just doing whatever the hell you feel like, and so there is a tension there, because the more freedom you have, in some respects, the less order you have, and the more order you have, or the more discipline you have, the less freedom you have. Do you buy that, sir?
Yeah, I think that is exactly how that exchange works. But I think a lot of the time in America, we conflate, the idea of freedom with the idea of like a free and orderful society. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that's even a word. Apologies if it's not. But it's like we seem to think that because we're land of the free, that we're, some people have the perspective you can pretty much do anything. But then the flip side of that is that people also expect like society not to be like lawless to a degree, right? And that's kind of the way that goes. I mean, that's the reason why we have some of the problems that we have in America, is because our objective is to be free. But like you said, I mean, that loosens the restraints on society pretty heavily.
Well, sometimes if you think about it, if you give somebody freedom, let's say you give somebody freedom, you say, all right, you can play your music as loud as you want at 2:00 in the morning. Now that person has freedom, but you don't have much freedom if you're trying to get to sleep.
Right.
So one person demanding that they have their freedom sometimes impinges on your ability to do what you want to do.
Well, I had a history teacher in high school who talked about that all the time, because that was a question that would come up during, like, especially like early gov classes and stuff like that in high school and even middle school and stuff, where people would be like, okay, well, if say like a lot of times it would come in when we're talking about the Bill of Rights, and it's like, my right to free speech is one of the great examples. Well, you can have free speech as much as you want, but there is a line, because your free speech only matters when it pertains to you being able to like speak, your truth or whatever you want to say. But actually, like, you don't have complete free speech. You can't yell bomb in an airport. You can't yell fire in a movie theater. And he went down the line and just explaining all these things. It's like, so, yeah, you have a freedom of speech, but also in reality, there's limitations, because your inalienable rights don't supersede someone else's inalienable rights,
Yes. Well, for example, when I first started out practicing law, you could walk into a federal building, just walked into it. Nobody stopped you. There was no guards, no nothing. And then if you wanted to do some research, you just walk into the law library and you'd sit down and research for hours. You wanted to go to an airport. It used to be when I was a kid, we'd go to the airport with my uncle. We'd watch the planes come in and out. Nobody stopped us at the airport, and we sat in front of the window, right in front of where the planes took off, and we'd sit there for an hour to watch the planes go in and out. And that was because there was, in some respects, there was order imposed on people. There was a certain way you had to do things. And as a result, because people adhered to those principles, you had the freedom to walk into the airport whenever you wanted to. You had the freedom to walk into a federal building whenever you wanted to. Now, because a lot of people are doing what they want, you're constrained to stand in line sometimes for an hour to get on a plane.
Right.
And so, people that are demanding that they have freedom, in some respects, it impinges on your own. Now, that gets me really to the point that I guess we were getting to earlier. We're talking about the cities in this country and the fact that people are, in many respects, some people are doing whatever the hell they want to do.
Absolutely.
And as a result, people are afraid. People are afraid. I was talking with somebody the other day. People in Chicago, many of them are afraid to get on public transportation. And justifiably so. They're afraid.
Absolutely.
There are people, particularly in minority areas, they're afraid to leave the house after dark. And so that brings us to Chicago, to DC. Do you have thoughts about DC?
You mean recently or just overall?
Well, both, but recently is, I guess, the focus.
I'm not like super. I actually so one thing for me is I try to, when stuff like what happened in DC kind of happens, I try to kind of give it a little bit of time to metastasize as like so I can get full perspective on the issue, because I feel like I was this morning, I was laying in bed and I was watching CNN, and then I flipped back and forth to Fox, and the perspectives you get are so wildly different,
yes,
that it's kind of hard to make sense of anything. So for me, I'm not like the most educated on the facts of that and everything, because to me, it's like there's no objectivity. I watch one side and it's like, oh, this is, that it's from one lens, and I watch the other side and it's from another lens. I get a little worried about it, but just briefly, I mean, I think that I wanted to touch on something you said just a second ago. Yep. When you're talking about Chicago, or really any major city, truly any major city, and this does go globally. I don't think it's just America, but it's especially true in America. When we have this conversation about freedom and how sometimes your freedom, supersedes other people's, and vice versa, or if it does, then, that's when the clamps come down and order have to come down. Going out at night shouldn't be a obstacle, period. Doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what the racial makeup, it shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be. And the problem is that we currently live in a time period where there's not been a lot of conflict that all of us as a people have had to dedicate ourselves to, like unifying, and like a war, a Vietnam, a world war, or anything like that. There's not been anything that we've had to all since 9/11 at least, all to kind of together be like, all right, screw the stuff that we're worried about, let's handle this. There hasn't been that unifying conflict, and there hasn't been that unifying tragedy that puts the gravity of human life in everyone's head. So you have a bunch of kids walking around who've never dealt with any sort of real stuff. Video games is how they know what guns are, and how they know what military tactics are, and how there is no recent war that they're really necessarily talking about. I mean, it's been completely rewritten, Iraq and Afghanistan, to being completely baseless and absolutely no reason to be over there. And you can debate that all day long, but there's no reality to that war. So war happens in the streets, in the cities. War happens in schools. War happens on public transportation, because these people don't have any understanding of actual real life gravity, of actual a real situation happening that makes it so that you're like, okay, maybe it's not worth it to go grab my gun over this conflict. Maybe it's not worth it to go beat this guy's butt over this conflict, right? There's just been nothing like that, and that's how you get this stuff that's going on in cities right now. But that's all I wanted to say. We can go back to DC. I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Yeah, well, in DC, that's a question, I guess, of order versus freedom. You have the National Guard being deployed there, and as a result, crime has gone down significantly. But many of the residents are very, they have a lot of trepidation because uh, they fear the government, they fear the police, they fear as though that they're being taken over by the government in some respects.
Sure.
But but like I say, there's a tension there because um, uh, if you're afraid for your life, and or you're afraid for you're afraid that your car is going to be carjacked, or you don't feel that you can walk down the street, or you feel you just feel that you have to be on guard all the time. If that's one of the ways that you're feeling, uh, is it better or is it worse that you have a you have the National Guard come in and they kind of put some order in place? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, it's interesting. I was going to say it's funny, but it's not funny. It's just interesting. That's kind of what I was talking about a couple weeks back when we were talking about Nice, right? And how when I went to Rome, there was this like massive population of like beggars and scammers and what have you. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't walk down one street without someone offering you a bracelet or a rose or whatever. And that might not be the most malicious thing. It's definitely not what we're talking about as a problem in America, but it's annoying to say the least. And it definitely degrades your opinion and enjoyment of a city that you're in. Well, what do they do in Nice when it's European vacation? There's like legitimate soldiers and like, police with real guns out there, not pistols. These are guys with the gun over the front, you know what I mean? Like on the corners and stuff. And I don't think they were being malicious. They weren't trying to be tough guys or something. They're just there in case, you know what I mean? They're just there in case. And it made the place a lot better. Now in DC's case, I mean, that's one of those things, right? Because there's that dissonance where you believe you need to be free, but then if you see the police on the street, then what are you going to think? And then furthermore, we're talking about a population around DC that doesn't really like the president. And so when these people already see him as like a fascist or what have you, and then they look out their window and they see police or military, they're kind of like, that's that right there. It's like, okay, well, how free are we? He is taking over. This is a coup. This is, and it just spirals and spirals and spirals. Not that that's the truth, not that that's reality, but I totally understand why you would feel uncomfortable as a citizen of DC who like maybe doesn't do anything wrong, maybe has not experienced a lot of the adverse effects, all that. And you're like, why? What's the need for this? This is crazy. The flip side of that is I would choose which car I'm taking if I had to go to DC for something. You know what I mean? Like I would choose my worst car. I would drive the airport car, like a car that like the beater to go.
Yes.
I would have a hard time living in my house that I live in now if it was in that area. It would be a difficult sell for me because I wouldn't want to have a glass front door. I wouldn't want to have, you know what I mean? All that type of stuff. Like there's a lot of decisions that I would make living in a city like that where it really can get kind of crazy. Yeah. And you can't punish people like me who are also important to the economy for a bunch of people who are like, well, I've just like been here for a long time and this is the way that it is. Like, that's also not fair, And I think that a lot of people don't understand that. They think that if they just sit in an area and, make it bad for 30 years, that they're going to just be like allowed to do that in perpetuity. And it's like, well, eventually, if we're going to talk about housing crisis, we're going to talk about this, we're going to talk about that. Eventually something has to give. You know what I mean? You can't have all rent control be in violent areas, because then what do you do for peaceful rent control people? What do you do?
No, yeah, that's right. And of course, the other problem is that what was happening for the last 30 years, I mean, this thing didn't develop overnight.
No.
So whoever's been in charge, and there've been a number of people that have been in charge, I don't want to throw all the blame on Muriel Bowser. Actually, in some respects, she's better than some of the people that preceded her.
For sure.
But the fact of the matter is that that the situation has really gotten worse over time, and it's just allowed to deteriorate. You could almost analogize it to a guy in a very nice neighborhood who starts letting his grass grow long, and before long, the grass is a foot high. Now it's a foot high. It would have been very easy to a job mow the lawn, a month ago. But
Sure.
now the thing is out of hand. It's going to cost you a lot of money to get the thing repaired. It's going to take a lot of work. So and you
And
might
it'll
say,
kill, that's a great analogy which I can relate to now because I got a lawn to mow,
oh,
if not even just I have to mow it right now, but I understand because I have to. You're absolutely right. You let it go for 2 months, all of a sudden it's a problem. It also kills all the grass underneath it when you do cut it.
yes,
That's the part of the analogy that's I think really important is if you let it go for so long and then you have to go and trim it and make it nice,
mhm,
it kills everything that was there. So
yes.
that's that, people like love to cry about gentrification, but let's talk about Hyde Park in Chicago briefly. What would you do to Hyde Park to make it a passable place for the university that shares, that's right there. The university's in Hyde Park. What do you do to make that a nice area other than put nice things in it and raise rents and put nice? What do you possibly do? I mean, the area that's an area that was genuinely a gem of America. That's the Museum of Science and Industry and the Field Museum and the Shed Aquarium. That's
Sure.
all on that same campus, that same stretch, and it's horrible up to 10 years ago, and it's a little better now, but it was horrible. And what are you gonna do? You when you cut the grass, it dies underneath. You got to build something. You can't just leave it vacant because then you get another terrible area.
Yeah, and so and so a lot of times, I think it's almost with anything that you have to do, you know, you, yeah, sometimes it's difficult to do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it.
For sure.
So, for example, if you're looking after your health and you don't want to eat the right food, so you go out and buy a bag of potato chips, or you eat a whole bunch of stuff that you're not supposed to eat. Now a year or two goes by, now you're not in very good condition.
Yep.
And now what do? I mean, do you have to go to the doctor? Do you have to go to the gym? Do you have to get on it? But if you had done a little bit right along, it wouldn't have been that difficult. I think that's pretty much what's happening. We a lot of times we failed to take care of our neighborhoods, our cities on an ongoing basis, and as a result, we've just kind of ignored them, and they've deteriorated before our eyes. And now we turn around and we say, "Hey, look, these cities, you can hardly live in these places. I mean, it's a dangerous place, and anybody with any kind of money or the means to leave, they leave, and
Yep.
as they leave, the city becomes poorer, becomes more dangerous, and as a result, more people leave, and you finally end up with very little there. And so you have problems like you have cities like Gary, Indiana. You have cities like Baltimore.
Baltimore, yep.
I mean, these are places that people don't want to be in. As a result, what happens a lot of times in these places, you have the stores, they close up, and the stores close up. The facilities that make life easier for you, the gas stations, the beauty parlors, the barbershops, they leave, they close up. And so as a result, now if you live in one of these places, your freedom is pretty much taken away from you. You have to travel. Instead of going down the street, you have to travel a couple miles to get to a supermarket. And so as a result, you're not as free as you used to be, and it would have been so much easier had things been taken care of in the first place.
Well, and that not that it's necessarily one-to-one real life or not, but so I love watching HBO shows, right? So I've finished The Sopranos like a month ago. I'm watching The Wire now. The Wire deals with like basically drug cops and then the drug dealers in Baltimore. Okay,
in Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah, it's in Baltimore. And so this is one thing that just kind of blows my mind, right? I'm watching The Sopranos, and we have a lot of family who live in the area where The Sopranos takes place, like a lot,
Oh,
like
yeah.
in Marlboro, Matawan, all those North Jersey, Central Jersey suburbs,
Yep.
Hazlitt, all of them. We have people there. The first thing those people will tell you is that that's no longer reality there. There probably is still a mob. They're, union stuff and construction, all that, but they've since graduated to, a lot different level of crime, a lot different tier of crime. And they've figured out, a lot of them probably, that they just can't do crime anymore after RICO cases kind of became a thing, because it made it impossible to have those massive groups running high profile operations in a city, because they'll just RICO you. And so they developed. And now if you go to New York, you might never see a trace of the mob, ever. Same thing in Chicago. You might never see a trace of it. But if you watch, and I'm talking about this from the perspective of The Sopranos, whatever, but if you watch The Wire, that's exactly what's still going on right now. It's maybe they have cell phones, maybe they have whatever, but it's the exact same stuff that's going on right now. And that kind of, to me, and also the Wire is lauded as being one of the most accurate depictions of what it depicts, right? And so it's like, how is these people who went and they had to, probably, like, in order to build the story for The Wire, they probably had to go and talk to people who were in jail for 20 years, people who went to jail for this one. So it's even past knowledge. They can't even be completely up to date, and it's still almost one-to-one exactly what's going on in the same city in Baltimore. And therein lies your issue. There's no development. There's no attempt at development. And some of it's because a lot of people in that lifestyle die early. And so how do you have development when you get truncated before you can use your wisdom backwards, But it just speaks to like partially, I think it's being in survival mode, where it's like, I don't have enough to meet my basic needs, so I'm always acting in that like more like instinctual way. So part of it, I'll give grace there. But then the other part of it is like, well, then explain to me how that the people who are living in the same, if not worse, conditions in the country can figure it out, or a Mexican family in San Antonio can build a business, or a Muslim family who came here post 9/11 can build a business. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not even specifically talking about just like black people in bad neighborhoods or anything. I just mean in that city urban culture, no matter what creed or race you are, I don't understand why it's always the people who are doing the worst for your community that get glorified, and everyone else is a square, and there's just zero reason for introspection. There's zero reason for development. There's whatever. And so anyways, to your point though, that's why these neighborhoods suck for 30 years. I mean, Chicago had, for the first time in a long time, I think something in 900 North Michigan Avenue, which is the Bloomingdale's building, an apartment went for sale there for less than it went for sale in the 90s.
Yes.
That's insane. I mean, that is insane. That is a sick city, if that's the way, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt about it. So that's another problem that the cities are having is the homelessness.
Yeah.
The homelessness, and you have, in addition to that, you have an influx of folks that don't know the culture, and
Right.
so that's also a problem. But when you mentioned about the mafia, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. The mafia was based on the old Roman armies. And so they had they had the captains, they had the bosses, they had the foot soldiers, and so on. And so there was an organization there. There was an orderliness to it, as much
For
as
sure.
they were crime ridden. There's no doubt about that, but there was an orderliness to it, and so we. And sometimes in the old days, like they used to talk about the mafia controlled bars and places like that, you were relatively safe there because they couldn't afford to do anything that would cause the police to come around.
Right.
So there was an order there. Today, in many of the cities, there's no order.
Right.
So I mean, you're walking down the street and you get shot. They say, well, why did this poor guy get shot? Well, we don't know. He's walking down the street. He had no business walking down the street. Just like those kids, they had no business being in church praying. They had no business doing that. So they were shot. They were killed. And,
Right.
that's, and there are these children. I'm thinking of places like Washington, D.C. You've got these little children, 2 years old, 4 years old. They're being killed. They're being murdered for absolutely for no reason whatsoever. And yet, when they try to impose an order on them, it's kind of resented. How dare you try to protect the area when we were perfectly free to do what we wanted to do? But that's not absolutely true. When you're those neighborhoods, there's very little freedom to do what you want to do.
Well, yeah, and like it actually, one of the most like eye-opening ones of those for me was, I don't know if you remember, but I want to say it was 2017, summer 2017, maybe summer 2018, but I think 2017. And Dwayne Wade, who's from Chicago originally,
Yes.
played in Miami his whole
Yes.
life, right? He signed
Yes.
with the Bulls. It was a big deal. I mean, everyone, myself included, we always say, oh my God, look at this great player who's from Chicago in the NBA who didn't come back to the Bulls. What the heck? Right now it's Anthony Davis is that guy, right? It's not frustrating, but it's like, man, I wish you played for the city because it would mean a lot. And I wish we didn't suck, right? So anyway, so we got Dwayne Wade. Literally, I'm pretty sure the day after his signing, if not like within a week or so of the regular season starting, his cousin got shot by a stray bullet. She was walking her baby down the street. She was just literally with a stroller walking her baby down the street.
Yes.
And she got shot by a stray bullet and killed. That was his welcome back home. That's a native Chicagoan. She lived in Chicago her whole life, everything. That was his welcome home. So it's not just wrong place, wrong time, all that crap that people like to tell you. It is a problem. That is a serious, serious problem. And you wonder why someone like that wouldn't want to come back, would want nothing to do with the city, because what does the city do for you at a certain point? You know what I mean? At least even places like, LA and New York do some job to insulate you from the stuff. But when you're talking about like a Chicago, a Baltimore, a New Orleans, like Houston, these cities, like, yeah, they've got nice areas there you can avoid all of that. But like the city itself is so riddled with like terrible, terrible behavior and in chaos, truthfully. Like what's the point? What's the point? What's the point in going there as a regular person?
Yeah. Well, so we have these cities. My thought was, if you take a look at some of the most successful people in the country, they come out of these cities. They come out of the cities. Historically, they come out of the cities. They come out of places like Brooklyn. They come out of places like the Bronx. They come out of places like Chicago, the cities, because these were places where there were a lot of people, there were a lot of ideas flying around. There was a lot of things that were going on. And so that they were they're almost like an incubator for people that were achievers.
Right.
And we don't have that now. And we've become more and more isolated.
Because the version of that now is like, Chinese national or Korean national or one of those kids who lives in a city over there and grows up there. They have their incubator and then they come here because our higher education still is kind of the cream of the crop. And, they decimate the American children, decimate them. I mean, I know, because I went to school with exchange students. Now I'm pretty good with natural test taking and all that type of stuff. So I always had a fine time competing with those kids because test scores are a lot of the stuff that you get measured by, but the average American kid is not doing that. That's not a thing. I mean, it was like the top of our class was like the person who became valedictorian, the person who was runner up to be valedictorian, a bunch of Asian kids, and then it was like, you know, the grouping that I was in, you know, but like,
Yep.
it was not like it was, they were intermixed. They were at the top. They rose to the top every
Yes.
single year, no matter who they were, where they were from, whatever. And, I don't even, you know, some people think that might be like, you know, I'm not trying to be stereotypical, like, oh, if you're Asian, you have to be smart. That's not what I'm saying. But like, I've seen firsthand every single time an Asian kid came into our classroom, an exchange student, they dominated. They had a harder work ethic than us. They knew how to study better than us. They knew how to, you know, break down their problems into like manageable chunks better than us. They just were way more prepared for what school was the challenge that school was presenting them with than us. And I don't know. I don't know where we're getting that same caliber of kid in America. I don't know where you would, because if you're going to the suburbs, a lot of those kids have enough, their needs are met, and so the need to strive isn't there. And that's why in the cities you would get so many hardworking kids, or so many like high achieving kids, because you're smushed together. You might not have a lot, but you see people who have a lot every single day, you know, and so then you have something that you're kind of like put, you know, as like this is what I want to be. This is what what I want to do. And so you can like work towards it. Nowadays, the mentality, at least for American kids, is if you see a name on a building, you should hate that person. And maybe, you know, now it seems maybe justified to try and kill that person even is the attitude that some people have. You know what I mean? Like it's really, really crazy, but it's not the same. The culture has completely shifted for us. There is no like, look at a guy who did something great and work backwards from his achievements to become them or to have that lifestyle. It's now hate people who have more, and, you know, whatever.
Well, speaking about smooshing, you see, we want to talk about a place that smooshes more than any other place in the world, as far as I know. And that's a place you might have heard about. It's called Japan.
Yep.
Japan, they make some stuff. Some of the stuff is pretty decent. Toyota maybe, and most of your electronic stuff like Sony and all the high class places, things like Lexus, automobiles,
Yep.
that type of thing. That's Japan. And, you know, Japan is very homogeneous, actually. They have a very small amount of people that come into the country from other countries. So basically everybody there is Japanese. And they're very densely populated. And they have one of the lowest crime rates in the world.
Yep.
Yeah. So far, so good, right? They have a very high suicide rate.
Yep.
And they have a lot of mental illness, and so there is that problem too. And of course, just like you say, these same people, they come over here and they excel.
Right.
Somebody that tends to be mediocre, maybe in Japan, they come over here and they excel.
Oh yeah.
And so this country, it sounds like we've been bashing the country, which of course that's what I like to do, bash the country. But the fact of the matter is, I agree with a lot of commentators that say not only this is the greatest country in the world, which it is the greatest country that has ever in the history of the world. There's never been a culture like this. And the thing which is so disturbing to me is there are people that are trying to change it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that I always get into. Like you know, my wife is a surgeon, so I have a you know, a vested interest in the medical field staying somewhat the way that it is. And so when people talk about like these massive changes, like universal healthcare and stuff like that, not that I'm necessarily in theory opposed to it, but when people talk about that, the actionability of doing that lowers our standard of care. And people who have no one in the medical field and don't really listen to the way that nurses and doctors and PAs and all these people talk, the standard of care is what they're concerned about, and it's what they have the hardest time meeting. And the only way that they're able to meet it is because of the way our medical system is set up, is there's always financial incentive to raise your standard of care.
Yeah.
When you go to a place like Italy, or I don't actually want to speak to Italy, I'll speak to Canada, but like it's true almost everywhere else in the world. I try and ask people in other countries, but let's talk about Canada. In Canada, you can wait in the ER for 8 hours, maybe,
Yes.
because it's universal. Anyone can walk in and do whatever. And, that's fine. That's great. But I'll tell you what, when the richest people on planet Earth, sheiks, oil sheiks, people who have literal trillions of dollars at their disposal, when those guys get injured or get sick, they don't go to their own doctors. They don't go to Italian doctors. They don't go to British doctors. They go to the Cleveland Clinic. That's where they go.
Yeah.
They have a Cleveland Clinic in Dubai for that very reason, with American doctors for that very reason, because we are the cream. We are the top of that field, and it's a very important field to be at the top of, but we're there. And the reason we're there is because of financial incentive. You cannot like it and think that it's icky when you're having to deal with life or death situations and it goes through the lens of money. Fine, I will side with you on that. It can feel gross. It is kind of weird, but the richest people in the world do not go to their own country's doctors. They come here, and there's a reason for that. It's not because the flight is so fun while you're injured. You know what I mean? Like the proof is in the pudding. Like, this is the best place possible to get medical care if you can afford it, which sucks.
Yeah. So you're saying we're not all that bad. We're not all that bad.
I don't think so.
But there are places that could be improved and should be improved, and those are our cities. And our cities are those are the places that historically have made this country as great as it is. And I just don't like to see them in decline. You agree with that?
Yeah, it sucks to see it. And part of the problem is it starts so base level and like such a nuanced, starting point for how you make a city better. And I feel like you have to do education, there's social services, all of that stuff is great. But the problem is if you dump those things into a city where the people in the city is a culture that just straight up does not care about improvement, then, what are you doing? Then you're spinning your wheels. Why are those resources not going to the rest of the state where people are actually trying to make their area better? Why are those, and then you have tough decisions where, like, I mean, not that it's the end of the world or it matters, whatever, but like Chicago's a big enough city that like when a team like a sports team is talking about leaving your city, it should be a binary decision because that's culture. That's an event. That's something to do. That's draw. But the unspoken thing is, why does Chicago not really care too much if the Bears leave? A, because leadership is incompetent in the city, but B, because people go there and they park there. They go to the Bears games and they leave and they go right back home. If they're gonna go eat, they'll go eat back in their suburb. Because why would you want to be out in the city at 10 p.m. after a Bears loss or win rarely? Like, what would be the reason? And
no,
it's just this. It's almost like throwing their hat into the ring. You know what I mean? Like, even I felt the same way when New York has both their teams in Jersey. It's the same thing. It's like, do you have that little faith in the in your city? I mean, at least they have the excuse if they're on little islands and they don't have a lot of land and they have a lot of residents. Fine, whatever. But just all of these things, it's just degradation of like what brings the city value. You know what I mean? And like, now you ask a young kid who's only ever lived in the suburbs where you want to live. I don't think the city's high on the list. And if it is, it's for an idealistic representation of it, not because of what it would actually functionally be like if they lived there,
Yeah, although getting back to that messy lawn again, you see, the lawn is keep on growing. And so you want to, you can say, well, we're not going to do anything about it. But as bad as that messy lawn is, it's time to get and try to go in there and cut it. You see,
Right.
Cut it and try to remedy the situation a little bit and make the lawn better. That's, I think, what we want to do with the cities, try to make the cities better. I think that we have is actually a lack of commitment for the cities. That that is a very complicated question as to why there's a lack of commitment and how you remedy that. But I because a lot of these, when you talk about the cities, a lot of the victims in the cities are the people that are the most resistant. They're resistant to like say using DC. They're resistant to having the National Guard come in there. But these kids and their families, they have a substandard educational system. They have a substandard neighborhood. They have substandard facilities, and so they're behind the eight ball to start out with. And so
Right.
you try to. So the idea is rather than give them a handout or something, try to make the situation a little bit better. Try to make it so that they're able to walk around in a neighborhood without being shot, but without being beat up, without being intimidated. And I think that's the idea. Anyway, so we talked about the tension between freedom and between order, between discipline, between safety. Covered a lot of ground. Now, of course, as usual with this with our presentation, we've looked at the problem. We've seen the problem, don't you see? Now, if you could wrap this up in just a minute or two, can you just give me the solution? I mean, I've gone to a lot of trouble to show you what the problem is. Just give me the solution, and we'll get out of here. Okay?
I'll take my best crack at it. Well, so me personally, I think that it's a two-part thing. It's the same thing. I've always felt this way about politics. I think I'll feel this way forever. Both sides are right. Both sides are completely wrong too. Right? Like they're that's just the reality of it. Anything that you specify down into like a team, it's going to be wrong to a degree. No one ever agrees with their boss 100% of the time. No one agrees with their parents 100% of the time. When you appoint a figurehead and essentially a group of figureheads to take your take up your battle for you, whatever, they're going to get some stuff wrong always. And it just so happens that they've been taking up this battle for 200 years. So they get a lot of stuff wrong. It's a game of telephone almost at this point. That said, they're both kind of right. You need to have social services. You also need to have police. You need to have education be, standardized. You also need the education to actually be helpful in furthering these kids' real life problems, not these random fantasy issues that a lot of people do want to sneak into education. You have to take care of these people like for probably a generation and a half, 2 generations, where you're genuinely, whether through social work, whether through financial help, whether through education, where you're essentially taking a culture by the hand and breaking the bone and rehealing it. And you're saying, this is how you have to be in order to be a successful member of American society. And that doesn't mean that you're not welcome in America if you don't adhere to it. It means that you're not going to succeed in America if you don't adhere to it. I think that's another thing that needs to be like restated multiple times. No one's saying that anyone who misbehaves or violates a social contract instantly isn't an American, or someone who comes over here and takes a little bit to get into the culture. You never have a chance of being an American because you didn't learn the language fast enough or blah, blah, blah. None of that's true. None of that's true. We're part of what makes this country awesome is that there's so many different people here. People need to have a unified culture that they're working for. People need to be behind the American culture. People who disagree with America need to have American flags outside of their house. Same type of mentality. You can't hate this country and want to benefit from it. You can't succeed in this country and hate this country. It's just not the way that it's supposed to work. There's flaws, there's problems, there's plenty of things that you could nitpick, and there's plenty of things that are not nitpicks, that are real problems with America. But at the end of the day, if we could get everyone on the same page of like, hey, we're Americans, bumps and bruises and all, this is what we are, and this is what we're working toward, and this is our cultural identity, we'd be a lot better in this country. And it just a unified cultural identity by any means is the way to solve this problem, I think.
Yeah, well, there was this one of the leaders that we had. He wanted to mobilize the military, and he made people do a lot of things that they didn't want to do. Actually, he aggravated people so badly that most of the country was against this guy, and actually ended up getting shot. Of course, I'm talking about Lincoln, you know.
Right.
So a lot of times those things will happen. You do things that everybody that you know. If you listen to everybody all the time, you're probably going to be wrong. So on that upbeat note, sir, we're going to call this a day. If you have anything else you want to say for posterity, anything?
No, just like, subscribe. If you dislike, go somewhere else. Other than that, I mean, you know, I'd love. I checked that email. I'd love to get a couple of email suggestions from some people. Maybe a little bit of a hey, this is what we should, you know, something to touch on.
You gotta give out that email there again.
Yes. What's that email?
It's Scully Sez Patrick at gmail.com. And I believe Scully Sez Tom at gmail.com.
Okay.
Those two right there.
And so now we'll find out what, well, maybe it's a good thing that we don't know what people are thinking, but we'll take our chances. You know, you have to venture out there and take your chances. So on that note, sir, I've tried to get rid of you a couple times, but now I'm going to make it official. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Good day to you.
Good day to you too.